In the news this week, Mark McGowan gets top grade for his performance in 2022. Peter Kennedy's exclusive take.
Concerns over youth crime in WA this festive season as regional communities continue to call for help.
Suing for billions, Clive Palmer's legal action costs WA taxpayers more than $2 million.
And a sad note to end 2022 as a vital community service in Perth closes shop. And later, Dr. Andrew Miller's comment.
This is The Evening News with Ivan Loom and Maliva Thorne.
Good evening and Merry Christmas. WA Premier Mark McGowan gets a rating of 4 out of 5 stars for his performance as Premier. Despite facing the continuing threats of COVID, dealing with pressure on the WA health system and engaging in nursing and police wage disputes, Mr McGowan has come out the other side. Political commentator Peter Kennedy joins us exclusively this festive season to discuss why he gives Mr McGowan such a high rating. Peter, thanks for joining me. How do you rate Mr McGowan's performance in 2022?
Well, I think Mr McGowan's had a good year. Perhaps not as good as previous years, but I'd still give him a very solid 4 out of 5.
4 out of 5 is a really high score. What's missing to get the last star?
Well, there's a suggestion in some quarters that he's becoming a little bit sort of overconfident. I think that perhaps if he is overconfident, it's understandable because he's had a very good year. The economy's in good shape, which is not to say there aren't any problem areas. There are problem areas. Obviously, the hospital's problem area. Law and order in country areas, a problem. Things like that. But by and large, he's run the state well. The state's in good shape, and there's no competition for him.
Now, I did manage to ask Mr McGowan about his thoughts on his own performance, but he doesn't really want to comment on it. Here's a clip. Watch. Just Premier, if you don't mind, drag on a little bit. Ask you, end of the year's coming. What do you reckon? How do you reckon you've performed? How will you rate yourself as your when it comes to being a Premier yourself?
Thank you for that question. I'll let other people decide that.
Don't you have your own thoughts about how you...
No, I don't.
Okay, so what do you make of his response?
Well, I think that's wise, actually. It's wise for political leaders to, as they say often, we'll leave that for the commentators, because the last thing leaders want to be seen to be is being a little bit arrogant, a little bit self-congratulatory, and I mean, Mr McGowan, his approval rating is not as high as it was at the beginning of COVID, but it's still pretty high. So, very wise, I think, for him to say, I'll leave it for the commentators. I won't make him get involved.
Just very quickly, I understand there's a milestone coming in March next year for Premier McGowan. What is it?
Well, Mark McGowan's unassailable as Labor Premier. He'll bring up 6 years in the job March of next year. And when he brings up 6 years, that will make him the longest-serving Labor Premier in Western Australia for 75 years. That is quite an achievement. And the way he's going, there's no rival for him. And if he stays on till the next election, as he's indicated he will, he'll go on for 8 years plus.
Peter, thanks for your insight this year. Merry Christmas to you, and we'll see you in the new year.
And it's been a pleasure to be involved, and a happy festive season to you all. Thanks very much indeed.
Youth crime continues to be a major concern this festive season as residents prepare for a far from relaxed summer. The outcry from regional towns is not over, with hopes that the government will increase police and community resources to reduce crime. The Liberals Mining and Pastoral Region member Neil Thompson joins us from Carnarvon. Neil, thanks for joining us. Christmas is finally here, but for residents up north, do they have a sense of joy given that crime remains a major problem?
Well, look, here I am in the beautiful Carnarvon at the moment, and unfortunately that beauty belies the sad situation we have in the community where, the crime situation is out of control. We have a lot of concern. The Shire President has put out a very moving message on Facebook today, and that's Eddie Smith, Councillor Eddie Smith, obviously weighing up the issue around the community in terms of its opportunities in tourism, but having to say, well, look, we have to be honest about the situation. It's so bad, we have to speak up. We can't just keep pointing out all the beauty. We have to identify some of these huge challenges we're seeing. with juvenile crime out of control, with family violence out of control, with our social housing system at complete breaking point. It's a very sad situation.
What would the residents in WA's North like to have from the government as a gift this festive season?
Well, I thought the former Labor Premier, Peter Dowding, made some very good points recently when he said there needs to be much more investment in our regional towns, and particularly the Department of Communities needs to be reinstated in these towns. We have an office here which is empty, as far as I can tell, almost all of the time. I think there's nobody here of any seniority based here at all. We have programs in relation to sport and recreation that aren't properly supported, and we have the issue of social housing, which is just not fit for purpose. I could add to that the issue around school attendance. We need to deal with getting our kids back in school. We have to do something about this because we've got a lost generation in our community, and it's just getting worse.
Thanks for being with us, Neil, and Merry Christmas to you.
Thank you very much, Melly, and look, Merry Christmas to all your viewers.
The WA government received cost recovery from billionaire Clive Palmer, which was ordered by the court. The costs are related to Mr. Palmer's defamation lawsuit against the WA government during the pandemic. $445,700 are recovered to Western Australia after the court ordered Mr. Palmer to pay Mr. McGowan's cross-claims of $20,000 in damages from the 22nd of December 2021. So far, the government claims Mr. Palmer's legal action and cross-claims cost taxpayers $2,021,665. For the last 2 years, Mr. Palmer and his companies have launched 13 lawsuits against the WA government, government ministers and state government officials. 11 of them have been discontinued. Western Australia is entitled to the cost of 10 lawsuits.
The McGowan government has signed a 5-year ambulance service contract with St John's, with additional requirements and penalties added to the terms and conditions. The government has emphasised that the agreements were modernised to improve service performance and responses. The fresh contract includes new funding for 34 paramedics in Perth and 31 in regional areas, with new KPIs with financial penalties based on response times, and ends the extended transfer of care payments. The government will also have more power to audit and inspect St John's ambulance services.
The new agreement allows for greater collaboration with St John Ambulance, the Department of Health and our hospitals. We have seen, through the multi-agency intervention that was in place with St John over the winter period, we saw significant improvement in St John Ambulance performance with the existing resources that they had. They lifted their response time. Their priority 1 response time went from 75% up to 84%. And that is just with working with our expert team from police and the Department of Health on helping to manage some of those pressures on the system.
A massive explosion happened in Lake this weekend, sending thick black smoke into Perth's southern suburbs and waking up residents in the middle of the night. The incident happened at around 2:20 a.m. on Saturday morning on Cocos Drive in Lake, with reports of a hazmat fire burning at a factory unit located beside a petrol station. 12 fire trucks and vehicles rushed to the scene, with police, Western Power, ATCO and the Department of Water and Environment Regulation assisting firefighting efforts. The Department of Fire and Emergency Services WA stated it's still too early to determine the cause of the blaze. WAMN News understands there are concerns within the community in the last few months regarding the site.
An 18-year-old man has been charged following a car chase. The incident happened at around midnight on Wednesday when a Nissan Navara entered a roundabout in the wrong direction at Murdoch Road. The move was spotted by a police patrol unit in Thornley, and officers caught up with the car, activated emergency lights and signalled for the driver to pull over. Authorities alleged the vehicle slowed down but did not stop. The police car siren was activated and the driver allegedly accelerated away. Police say the Nissan was driven in a dangerous manner at high speed, with the police helicopter also monitoring the vehicle. After going past several suburbs, the car chase ended in Dudley Park on Darwin Terrace. The driver allegedly fled the vehicle on foot and after a foot chase was arrested on Tasman Loop. WA Police confirmed an 18-year-old driver with no fixed address has been charged and faced court on Thursday.
And now here's AMA WA spokesman Dr. Andrew Miller with his weekly COVID-19 update and medical commentary for this Christmas weekend.
Hi, Merry Christmas to everyone out there, and thanks for your time. Thanks to Ivan and the WAMN crew for another year of excellent reporting on local and international issues. We really appreciate the work that you do, and we really appreciate all the viewers. In terms of COVID, still riding through a wave here in Western Australia and across the country at the moment, with a couple of hundred of hospitalisations around here, and thinking of those people and their families in particular, going through a stressful time as the rest of the community celebrates. Of course, it's not a happy time of the year for everybody, but I think it's a good time to pause, recharge, and to also be thinking of others in our community. So stay safe out there, enjoy yourselves, relax and recharge a bit, and look forward to hopefully making the world a better place for another year. Thanks for your time.
And that was Dr. Andrew Miller, who we wish a very Merry Christmas and thank for his time over this year. We'll recap this week's top stories in just a moment.
But right now, here's Madeline Lombardi with Western Perspective. Maddie, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you too, Ivan and Melly. Welcome to Western Perspective. I'm Madeline Lombardi. 2022 has been a significant year, and with the year drawing to a close, we mark a sad ending. After around 27 years in the Multicultural Migrants Resource Centre, they will be closing their doors and transferring all of their services and clientele to the Multicultural Services Centre of Western Australia. Multicultural and diverse communities' needs are assured into the new year, as many of its service models and people remain unchanged. I've spoken exclusively with MSC WA Executive Director Ramdas Sankaran and MMRC's Vice Chair Lena Bakshi.
The decision for the closure has been coming for a while, but somewhere in maybe June, we as a committee realised that this was untenable and that we would have to take some really hard decisions. And that's when we sought out, I suppose we could have returned the money, but we sought out organizations. We decided that we would make sure that the services would continue, and that's why we're having this conversation, I suppose, today. And that's when we sought out organizations that were kind of like-minded and doing the kind of work we were.
I think what we talked about in our last interview as well was that with the closure of this, that bigger organisations like government-funded staff and things like that, they weren't considering local and small communities as well. Is that something that's quite upsetting with the closure of MMRC?
Well, I suppose on the one hand it's sad to see something that's been around for 27 years go. On the other hand, I suppose I sleep well at night knowing that all of the staff that we have a job, are employed still, so the skills are still in the sector. MSCWA have those skills now, so we haven't lost that, and we haven't lost the services because there's a like-minded organisation that has now taken over those services. So in that sense, I sleep well at night. On the other hand, yes, everything that's tiny, small, that has a kind of understanding of what's, has a finger on the pulse of a community, the loss of it is always sad because, you kind of lose this knowledge of what's happening. Having said all of that, MSCWA also has services in the very area that we used to service, so it kind of feels like a continuation of a different form.
So it's being passed on to MSCWA.
Yeah, look, I think the point that Lena just made is a very valid and important one, and that is this, because most people, when things like this happen, are understandably sad, disappointed, concerned, mainly because of the uncertainty of the future of those services. What has happened in this case is it has been an absolute seamless transfer of all the funded programs. They had another program which was, not totally funded, which is the immigration program. That unfortunately, was not tenable for us to take it on. It was too expensive. But all the other programs have been taken on. and virtually all the staff that came, that were implementing those programs have come across to us. So no one should actually notice anything other than when they front up in an office, the door would say Multicultural Services Centre and not Metropolitan Migrant Resource Centre, because the programs and the people who delivered them, there's no change.
That's good that it's had a seamless transition as well, because I remember, Lena, your concerns we were chatting before was that a lot of these people kind of go to services that aren't run by multicultural people, that don't have that, as you were saying, community outreach. People don't know people don't understand the culture if it's not people from that culture discussing these issues or sorting out these issues. So it's good that there's that seamless transition.
Look, I agree, and that this is, in fact, the most important reason why, the board and I, respect the decision that the MMRC board took, because as Lena mentioned early in this piece, they could easily have given the money back to the funding bodies. And had they done that, then it would have been the funding bodies that would have then distributed the money to whoever they chose fit. Would they have come to MSC and delivered it the way MMRC did so? I doubt it. That's not how it works. It would have taken much longer to resolve the whole thing. It would not have happened as seamlessly as it is happening now.
I think that's the sad.
Can I?
Yeah. Sorry.
Can I just add to that? And I think it's important, and I want to add to that, because when we started this conversation about, so what do we do with all of this? There were a few mainstream organizations, and I'll call them mainstream for lack of another word, who we did consider. But then again, you just become a tick box in terms of like a diversity client rather than the main focus. And so our focus very much was that it had to be a like-minded agency. It had to service the kind of people for exactly the same reasons that I mentioned to you the last time.
Porting across the main telephone numbers of MMRC, the staff telephone numbers will remain the same. The emails, if anyone send an email to the old MMRC email address of a staff member, it'll end up on the on the new email at MSC. So so we've done everything we can so that people honestly will not notice much changes happen. And physically, they still will be in Mirrabooka. So as I said,
that's the other advantage, absolutely.
And we look. I think what these kind of arrangements do help in the medium and longer term is the possibility of extending outsourced services further up north. We've already talked to North Metro TAFE, so it's a good chance that we could be operating out of Balga TAFE, but we well and truly want to offer services much further north. So sooner or later that's going to happen.
And you can read more about this story on our website, wamnnews.com.au. And now here is Pastor Peter Abetz to share a Christmas message to mark this festive season.
Well, Christmas is upon us. People have been busy, schools are finished, people have done their Christmas shopping, holiday plans are in place, Christmas dinners are being planned. But what is Christmas actually all about? With Scripture no longer being taught in most of our state schools, many children have no idea what Christmas is about other than perhaps Santa. But the reality is that Christmas is actually celebrating the birth of Jesus Christ nearly just over 2,000 years ago. Now, you might say many babies have been born in the last 2,000 years, so why do we bother celebrating this one? Well, there are a number of aspects to the story of Jesus. The one is that he was born in abject poverty. Some of you would know the story, how he was laid in a manger because there's no room for him and his mum in the inn. And so he was born in a stable. That means animal manure around, flies, mosquitoes. And he was laid there in that manger. And yet, despite growing up in such abject poverty, he went on to be the greatest influencer of all time. Historians of whatever persuasion would all agree that there is no one who's influenced humanity as much as Jesus Christ. So that's definitely worth celebrating. Now, Jesus, of course, went on to be a great teacher. He modelled for us how God wants us to live. And we all know that Jesus showed great compassion and love and care to those that were the down and outs, the destitute, those that were, if you like, the rejects of society. And his followers who followed his teaching, they also took it upon themselves to show love and compassion to those around about them. And they actually transformed the ancient world. Some of you may know that Christianity originally was a forbidden religion in the Roman Empire, but by 313 AD, it became a tolerated religion. By 384, it became the official religion of the empire. Why? Because Christians who embraced the teachings of Jesus showed so much love and compassion for those around about them that other people took so much notice. One of the governors who had the job of trying to eradicate Christianity in the Roman Empire, he wrote to the emperor in Rome and said, we cannot get rid of the Christians because they're so loved, because they not only look after their own poor, but they look after our poor as well. When there were epidemics, it was the Christians who went out and took the people who others had thrown out on the street and took them into their homes to look after them, because to them, to show love and compassion to their fellow human beings was more important than to actually even be alive. And many of the Christians actually died from looking after those kinds of people. So Christianity has had a massive influence on our society. But Jesus came not only just to be an example, he also came to restore us into relationship with God, because Jesus was not just a cute baby, he was also the Son of God. And through his life, he demonstrated how we should live, but he also, as you would know, went to the cross, and we celebrate that on Good Friday and Easter when he rose again. And that was about restoring us into relationship with God. And for Christians, that's the exciting thing about Christmas, is that this was the beginning of this great healing that was to take place by the coming of the Son of God into the world to restore us into relationship with God. And how life transformational that is, we see that in history. And I just wish you all a very happy Christmas, and encourage you to perhaps pick up, dust off your old Bible, have a read of the first few chapters of Luke's Gospel, and remind yourself of that Christmas story.
That's Pastor Peter Abetz, and now a brief weather update. A warm Christmas is definitely an Australian tradition, but get this, the usual high temperatures in the 40s are replaced with 27 on Monday, 25 on Tuesday, before hitting 29 on Wednesday and 30 degrees on Thursday. Meanwhile, overnight temperatures will stay below 20 degrees, with Wednesday night hitting a low of 13. And that's all from Western Perspective for this week and for 2022. Thank you so much for your viewership. For the premium exclusive reports, feature stories, opinion pieces and weekly podcasts, please subscribe to the WAMN Extra News Club, available every weekend. Support independent journalism and keep democracy strong. See you back in the new year. Back to you, Ivan and Melly.
Thanks, Maddie. And now here's Leo with what's coming up on 6 News tonight.
On 6 News, the post-Christmas heatwave set to begin as Aussie celebrate December 25 with family and friends. Anthony Albanese thanks those working today in his first Christmas message as PM, and more than a dozen people dead and 200 million affected as Americans are hit by a massive winter storm. You can see the latest details live on our YouTube channel. Just search 6 News AU to find it, or head to our website, 6newsau.com. For now though, guys, here's back to you. Merry Christmas.
Thanks, Leo. And that's our weekly news and current affairs. We have the latest news on our website, wmnnews.com.au.
Don't forget to subscribe to the WAMN Extra News Club so we can continue our work in the community. Full details on wmnnews.com.au/news/extra. And it'll be lovely to have your support during this festive season. Melly, where has time gone?
I have no idea. It's flown completely by.
It has, because this is our final program for 2022. Now, our normal news service will return on the 11th of January 2023. This program will return on the 15th of January 2023. Meanwhile, the WAMN Extra News Club will continue its regular podcasts and weekend articles during our service break. From Melly and myself, wish you good health, good night, Merry Christmas, and see you in the new year.
Thanks for watching, and we send love to those you love. Good night.
Good night.